you are, then welcome along, and it's tremendous to see you. And if this is your first month, your boxes look like this. Hold it this way around. Don't forget you've got your How to Taste Whiskey card, because we will just get stuck in due course. So if you're like, oh, I'm not sure how to taste whiskey, don't panic. This will be your friend. You should have your tasting notes. You've got your glasses. You're all good to go.
Absolutely. And for all of those who are with us for the first time, we always say this, but for anyone who hasn't heard this, please get involved with us on the comments. It's really, really important. We have so much fun reading all your tasting notes and all the things you're thinking. No question is too stupid. If you think, oh God, I don't want to ask that question, they'll laugh at me. We won't. This is an open community for everybody. So please ask away and feed us in with your tasting notes, because we love reading them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I say we will laugh if you're actually funny. If you're like trying to be funny, you are funny, we will laugh.
If it's really funny, we'll laugh with you, and that's great. It's even better. If you've got a question and it's funny, that's perfect.
Exactly. And what else to say? Yes. So obviously, if you're tuning in and you've got your whiskies, you're a member, which is fantastic. But I just wanted to draw your attention very briefly to the fact that we have loyalty points, because some people didn't know about this. And one way to earn them is to respond to the survey that we send out, because we love to hear from you, right? So when we're choosing these whiskies, we're like, we want to share stuff with you that we really and truly love, and stuff that's brand new. And occasionally, like this month, we might have a themed box. Yeah. But what we really want to do is hear from you guys too. Like, let us know what you want to taste, what you're really excited about, any particular guests you'd like on, any of this stuff. Oh, he won back on. That's a good shout. Oh my gosh, last week, 2 weeks ago, it was so much fun. And we are back tonight. So with our themed boxes, this month being Islay, just in case you've been living under a rock and have missed the memo, we've got 2 more guests from our Islay distilleries, or one not distillery, as we'll find out in due course. And I'm really excited for it. Andy, you are going to be up first.
I'm up first, and we're talking all things Bruichladdich.
Yes. And also on that note, if you are sitting here thinking, oh, it's an Islay box, and I am not keen on peated whiskey, and why am I here? What am I doing? We've got your back. This first dram will be your friend.
Absolutely. And we had that as well with Bunnahabhain in the first box, and everyone was pleasantly surprised to taste like unpeated Islay whiskey as well, because everyone always automatically assumes that Islay whiskey is peated, but it's not. So other comments coming in. Nigel Gain, hi everyone, looking forward to the tasting tonight. Gina saying good evening, welcome. Bruce Edwards, themed boxes are fun. I totally agree. So I think both our boxes have been pretty much a huge success, haven't they? The Women in Whiskey box, which was a massive success, and now our Islay themed boxes. So please let us know if there are any other themes you think that could be something you'd like to see in the future.
Basically, the whiskey world is so fabulously diverse, is that, you know, if there's something that you want to check out, just literally just ask for it and we'll do our best to get it, because all we really care about is sharing whiskies that are really great, really cool, really delicious with you all. And the more you're part of the club, the better. Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that note, I think we're going to bring Raymond in. He was not just joining us as a Bruichladdich brand ambassador. He's actually at the distillery itself. So let's bring him in. Hey, Raymond, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. I have not set foot in the distillery in so long. I've got all the FOMO right now.
Believe it or not, it's been a while since I've set foot in here as well. So it's great to be able to get back to the distillery as well.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I'm going to leave you both to it, and I will be sipping along. Don't panic with everyone else. And can't wait to chat with you in a bit. Enjoy it.
Bye, Christy.
See you in a bit.
How's it going, Raymond?
Not bad, thanks, Andy. Not bad. I was just explaining we've got some very Scottish weather going on, and I was worried that it was going to be coming through in the audio, but so far so good.
Okay. Have you actually just reopened the distillery?
The distillery is still not actually opened yet. Some of the visitor centres on the island are starting to open up, but we're a little bit behind in terms of that. So we've not opened the gates as of yet, but we are able to come on site for any work that needs doing.
And when will tours be kicking off again?
It's a very good question. One that I don't have the answer to, unfortunately. I mean, the great thing is I can take people on tour with my iPhone nowadays, you know, and I think that's something that we've really got into now, is the digital aspect and how much we can use it.
I think the whiskey industry has benefited so much from the digital aspect. I mean, tastings have still been going on. Obviously, they're not the same as they are when we're in person, we're at distilleries, but it's been amazing to continue to kind of be able to do tasting, talk with people, and kind of continue the industry going. So it's been really kind of a blessing for the whiskey industry.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing I've noticed over the past year and a half is whiskey tastings have become so much more accessible. You know, people with young families, or they might not be able to travel to a venue for a tasting, you dial in and you don't have to find a lift home at the end of the night, because you just shut the laptop and go to bed.
And it's brought people to wonderful subscription boxes and live tastings like this, like Pour and Sip. So welcome, everybody. Anyway, so let's talk about Bruichladdich. I mean, first let's talk about yourself and what you do at the distillery, and then we can kind of get into kind of more about the dram itself.
Sure. So at the minute, I am what you would call a distillery ambassador. So I guess kind of similar to a brand ambassador, but obviously based here at, well, home base. And what I'd basically do is education. So we would normally, in any other time, would be bringing guests over, educating them on what we do here, how we do it, the production process, and just really getting them to experience Islay. I mean, it's all very well trying to do it as much as you can on screen, but there's something about Islay that you really have to experience in person.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm super jealous as well, because like I say this to everyone who listens and has been here week in, week out. I mean, I often say this is my favorite distillery. I love this distillery, but Bruichladdich is definitely in my top 10. There's no doubt about it. It's absolutely one of my favorite distilleries. If anyone wants to hear my top 10, please get in touch. I will let you know. But it's absolutely, it's got, I mean, I love the foundation of it. I love we're going to talk about barley in a minute, but you know, nothing for Bruichladdich comes out under a certain percentage of alcohol. Nothing comes out unchill filtered. It's all just natural and kind of transparent, and I just love the brand. And then obviously we've got the Port Charlottes and the Optimals and stuff. So it's just it's a wonderful, wonderful distillery. So talk to us a bit about the distillery and the history of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruichladdich as a distillery, you know, as bricks and mortar, been here since 1881, but obviously our journey kind of started in the early 2000s, in 2001 when it was reopened. It had been closed for 7 years prior to that, and, you know, there was stock left in the warehouses. But when we reopened, that's when that real mission to, I guess, kind of put barley and bottle back together was when it started. And I think people who followed the distillery for quite a while will know that we've created a lot of different releases, a lot of exciting kind of experiments and different cask variations and distillation types. And, you know, it's really just about exploring the flavour. And I think that's what really drew me to Bruichladdich in the first place, was being able to follow the process and show people what's going on.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we talk about Mark Rainier, who's a really important person, obviously, in the setting up of Bruichladdich. We actually had some Waterford on this, maybe it was last month's Pour and Sip box. So we were talking obviously about barley and terroir, that horrible word that nobody likes in the whiskey industry. But we're going to talk about it a bit more today, because this is a kind of barley-centric whiskey. It's an Islay kind of. We were talking about how, you know, certain Waterford as well, we get a kind of time and place with the whiskey. Everything's come from this one place, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's what we're getting with this dram. So talk to us about why barley is important as well at Bruichladdich.
Yeah, I mean, so barley, as you say, it's been a huge focus since day one, and Mark Rainier obviously kind of was the man who reopened those gates. And it was you know, there was an aspect of bringing it back home. I guess, you know, Islay's synonymous with whiskey, and there's plenty of great distilleries here producing really unique flavours and styles. But from an ingredients perspective, you know, there was no barley grown here for malting since the 60s, you know. So it was nice to be able to bring that connection back from the agricultural side and the distillation side, and really put the kind of community focus back onto the liquid that we were creating.
Yeah, and I mean, I find it absolutely fascinating and kind of crazy that, I mean, barley is literally the first ingredient of whiskey, and it's one of 3 ingredients. And like, you know, I mean, there's many people who argue whether it is that's important or if it's not important to the end product. But I find it amazing that the first ingredient of whiskey is essentially kind of sometimes looked over, and we don't know where our barley's come from. And I mean, if you look at your guys' website, I mean, people are just going to get a kind of crazy amount of information about where this barley's been grown.
Definitely. I mean, we've got like the 3D map on the website, for example, which shows you the farms on Islay. And you know, obviously, yeah, there's a flavour perspective to come from, but there's a principle to it as well. And it's just really nice to be able to follow that journey. You know, I mentioned earlier, you know, you're watching the barley grow in the field, you're driving around the island, and you're seeing these signs growing for Bruichladdich. It's a sense of pride. And the fact that I can sit and wait a few years and then walk somebody through that whiskey's journey, it really just kind of, you know, it really just ties it all together for me. And, you know, barley is a huge focus, and it's a big talking point. And there's so many different kind of conversations going on about barley as well. But we live in a world now where I think people are just so much more involved in what they consume. And whether it's the fruit and veg you buy from a supermarket or the meat that you buy from a butcher's, you want to know more about where it's came from. You want to know more about how it's been treated and the build up to how it appeared in front of you. And I think the barley is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as well with the whiskey community and everybody with Instagram and subscription boxes like Pour and Sip and YouTube and all of this stuff just becoming more and more knowledgeable about the product, and they want the best version of the product. And now distilleries can't really cut corners as much as they used to, or, you know, and people really want to try just single malts that is kind of, you know, integral and like integrity malt, as I would say. And I think that's super important. So just before we go for the dram, and please keep your questions coming in tasting this, I will ask them to Raymond at the end. What are the challenges about growing kinds of Islay barley and producing, you know, a dram which is literally grown from just Islay barley, from Islay farms?
I would say one of the biggest challenges to the farmers that grow here, and I mean, if I had a hat, you know, I would doff my cap to these guys because the weather is incredibly bad outside at the minute, and this is one of the main factors that these guys have to deal with. You know, they're sticking to the typical growing season. You know, they're hoping to get the seeds in by April and get them out of the ground by September. But you know, the summer is a myth over here on Islay. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. There's been years where I've only had sunburn on one arm, and all of these different factors play a huge role in the challenges that these farmers face. And remember, they're not just growing barley for us. These are family businesses. You know, they've lived there for generations, and they've got their livestock and everything else to contend with as well. Weather, definitely one of the main factors. The geese tend to be a big talking point here on Islay, and to be honest, by the time the geese start to arrive, your barley should probably be out of the ground anyway. So it's more of a motivation than anything else.
Let's get it out before the geese come, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
And talk to us as well. So, I mean, this is the Islay barley. This is the 2012 expression I think we're drinking tonight. So you release this in batches, which is interesting because that way you get to kind of see the differences between the different farms that you kind of use, right?
Yeah, definitely. So we like to keep the growing seasons essentially separate. So this is the 2012 Islay barley from the 2011 harvest. So obviously we're always a year behind with the barley by the time it comes in September, and it's dried and prepared for malting and everything else. So yeah, 2012, and it's from a selection of different farms around Islay. So obviously a massive team effort in treating Islay as it is, a region. For Scotch whisky, and bringing these farms together to basically give people a snapshot of the island from that point in time.
Absolutely, it's like a time and place kind of thing. When you're drinking this dram, you're giving people that snapshot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's nice, you know, you're sitting with your bottle and you're drinking your dram, and yes, it's got Islay written on the bottle, but it's got Islay in the bottle as well. And I think that's really what kind of ties it together. From
start to finish, it's literally Islay, and that's really, really important. So what's going on in this dram? So we've got 50% ABV, which is kind of a classic Bruichladdich thing, and then non-chill filtered and no added colouring, obviously. And talk to us about the casks used in this.
Yeah, so it's gorgeous colour to this one. As you said, no caramel colour added, as with all of the whiskies that we produce here at Bruichladdich. This one is 8 years old, so it's predominantly American oak, 75% American oak maturation, with a 25% second fill French wine maturation. So these are both full term. The wine hasn't been a finish or an ace. It's not been 6 months. It's a full term. And then these two Islay barley spirits have been married back together. And typically our Islay barley range tends to be 6 years old. And we do like to keep them youthful because, you know, you're going to that effort of sourcing this local barley, and it would be a shame to almost hide it behind the cask. So a great analogy that one of my colleagues uses is, you know, an older whiskey will tell you great things about the wood the spirit's been in, but a younger whiskey will tell you more about the distillation and the ingredients that have went into that product.
That's really
this was an extra 2 years, a little bit older than some of the previous releases. And again, it was purely just because our head distiller, Adam Hannett, wanted to see how Islay barley would behave with an extra 2 years under its belt. Just because we've got all the casks up behind us, and it gives Adam that freedom to be able to just kind of experiment and check it out. It's a classic.
So what was the French wine cask? Can I ask?
I don't actually have the specific French wine in front of me, I'm afraid, so I can't disclose it. It's not that I don't want to tell you, it's that everybody went home before I remembered to ask. So I do apologise, and I apologise to the viewers at home as well, but I can assure you that it's very good quality French wine casks.
That's the main thing.
And what you get is you get that amazing synergy between the American oak and the European oak, each with their own attributes and their own characteristics. And you know, on the nose, if you keep your distance a little bit, the first thing you get is that lovely kind of creme brulee and honey aroma that you expect from American oak casks. That lovely sweet vanilla flavour that you get just off the top of the glass. And as you go closer, then you start to get the character of the distillery. You start to get that light, fruity, floral aroma. You get the citrus top notes coming through before leading into, I guess you could say, more kind of biscuity baked bread notes. You get more of the cereal coming through in the end. But it's great. 10, 15 minutes in the glass and it really starts to open up and tell you what's going on.
Yeah, I say to people to open up their drams and pour them whilst we start doing the talking before we get into the tasting notes. And there are tons of tasting notes coming in already. I'm just going to read a few out, Raymond. So, so Michael Smith saying the nose on this, I imagine that's the intonation you want with the exclamation mark at the end there. Pear, citrus, creamy, sea pebbles, hint of red fruit and fresh tomatoes. Interesting. Eo Jambo Rain, that's a lovely nose, buttery, creamy, but with a little hint of petrichor that we picked up with the Bunnahabhain last time out. David Stanton, buttered toast, peaches, orange. Ali Curran, lovely light nose, floral, sweet. Eddie Marshall getting apple tart tatin and ginger on the palate. A lovely spicy finish. Mike Pizarro, late to the party today. This is my favourite whiskey from the box, having tried a little before the session. Very naughty, Mike Pizarro. You have to wait for the session. Bought a bottle already. Nose, butter, yeast and fresh cut grass. Joe F, I'm now getting dried salted seaweed on the nose. Wow, we've got loads and loads of notes. I'll get to a few more. Ali Curran, lovely and oily on the palate. Very honey-like. Joe F, such an interesting array of scents on this one. Like Malcolm Tucker, the nose reminds me of buttered brioche with peach slices. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a lot of kinds of like honey, buttery kinds of notes that are really nice. And like you said, that kind of buttered biscuit kind of base that you often get on maybe like a cheesecake kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. And that French wine cask, you know, the European oak is a little bit more porous. It lets the whiskey in a little bit quicker. And the emphasis here is it's a second fill French wine cask. So we're not looking for intensity of flavour from what it's held, but from the actual cask itself. So you're able to get more of these lovely buttery notes, a bit more spiciness coming through as well. And of course, the fact it's not chill filtered, it sticks to the palate. You know, 5-10 minutes later, you're still getting these textures and these flavours developing.
Yeah. So talking of palates, shall we give this one a try?
You read all those tasting notes out, and I'm salivating, waiting for the cue to take a sip. So yeah, let's do it.
Cheers, everybody. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, that fruity Bruichladdich character, the distillery character, getting lots of kind of like light melon kinds of notes on this one as well, like hints of kind of like toasted coconut as well, which is really kind of lovely and tropical. It's, yeah, and like you said, that kind of viscosity, which is really kind of oily and chewy as well, which is absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and I mean, for those who have been lucky enough to come to the distillery and have a tour around, you know, when you get to the still house, these lovely fruity, almost grappa-like top notes fill the room. And like you say, you know, the melon, the poached pear, all these aromas really start to fill your senses, and it takes you back. You know, it's been a long time since I've been able to take a physical tour as well, so it reminds me of my tour guide days as well.
Nigel Gaines saying, what gives the light colour? Is it the oak casks or the climate? All the questions coming in there. Is it the oak casks or the barley or a combination?
So all of the colour comes from the wood. So the spirit's coming out of the still completely clear. We're filling it straight into the wood, around 68% alcohol. So we add it, we fill it in at full strength, and it allows it to interact with the wood that little bit better in the initial stages of maturation. It's nice, it's light and golden. I guess you would say straw is probably the colour that it gives off. And, you know, again, the amazing thing is, from batch to batch, the colour will differ slightly, and there will be that little bit of variation, but we love to celebrate the nuances like you would with a French wine. Different vintages give different characters, and you start to build a bigger story with each one.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's fascinating. And the great thing about batch kind of produced whiskey, in that be able to test the different years of these kinds of different whiskies and try and see those nuances and kind of line them up side by side and kind of try those different years and kind of see where they're different, what kind of differences have been used in that particular batch and why is it slightly different. And many more notes coming in. David Stanton, palate, oat cakes, almonds, honey, Jambo rain. Whoever mentioned digestives, I'm getting that now. Gareth, a few drops of water opens up the nose. Butter and biscuits, very clear for me. Chris May, I've got to get me to Islay. Absolutely, like we said, this is a kind of dram that's going to make you want to go there. Nigel Gain, ginger as well. My mouth is watering. Mike Pizarro, Octomore is amazing. I have an 8.2 unopened in the cupboard, which originally I was going to sell, but now saving for my 50th, 5 more years. Now this, anyone who isn't aware that there are 2 other brands, obviously, the Bruichladdich kinds of that you produce in Port Charlotte and Octomore, and they're both really, really different. I mean, I suppose Octomore is the absolute antithesis of this particular dram.
Yeah, I mean, they're so diverse in their own styles and what they bring to the table, but they all share the Bruichladdich style and the Bruichladdich philosophy, I guess you could say. So you can have an Islay Barley Octomore, you can have an Islay Barley Port Charlotte. There's so much to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Some more. Sarah Faruja, lovely. My first time trying Bruichladdich. James Fallon, lovely change. An Islay whiskey that isn't peaty. Well, we've had 2 in this box with the Bunnahabhain as well. So this is actually showing, because I mean, Bruichladdich don't produce a peated spirit, essentially.
Yeah, so I mean, Bruichladdich obviously unpeated, and the only thing that separates the 3 we produce really is that ppm in the malt. So Port Charlotte coming in at 40 ppm, and I guess you could liken that to the more traditional Islay style that people have expected. And then there's Octomore, which I mean, if you had it as a first dram in the evening, then you could probably write off every other dram for the night. There's an occasion for each one. There's a time of day, and there's a right time for each dram. And the Bruichladdich Islay Barley is that perfect dram to waken the palate up and get the senses going.
Absolutely. I mean, for anyone who does love the peaty stuff and they want to try something that is really going to blow your socks off and kind of just wake you up, and you will be, smelling it in the morning as well. Octomore's the range for you. It is just crazy stuff. But also, there are other barleys you've been experimenting. So you've got the beer barley, if I'm pronouncing that right, and you've also got the organic one as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think, again, people, like you said, have been looking at barley as just barley, and there's so much more to it. It's such a broad term to describe the variety that there is out there. We've used as many as 19 different varieties of barley, and there's 4 different varieties of barley in this one dram. Most people talk about maybe concerto barley, or they talk about quite a popular barley within the industry. But like I said, yeah, there's 4 different varieties just going into this one dram, and it's really down to the local farmer and what they want to grow. They know their fields, they know the climate, they know their soil, and they'll instinctively know which barley plays best with the land that they work with.
And what barley varieties have we got in this one?
So for this one here, we have got Concerto, we've got Oxbridge, we've got Pepino, and we've got Publican. So all 2 rowhead barleys, but obviously you mentioned the beer barley as well, which is probably the most drastically different strain that we use. It's a 6 rowhead, so much smaller grains, less sugar content, or should I say less starch inside in the head, but the flavour it produces, it's incredible to be able to explore the difference.
Absolutely. I mean, we actually discussed that as well, if anybody remembers, from a few months back, because we were talking with Amrut, and we were talking, they obviously have the 6-row barley that they use in their Indian, because that's what they have in India. So, I mean, that's really interesting to be able to line these up. And then there's also an organic one, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, so we produce organic whiskey as well. The strain of barley is not so much the focus, but how it's been grown. So not just what it is, but how it's been grown. And of course, organic certification takes a very long time. I believe a farm has to be growing for at least 10 years organically to receive that certification. And again, it's really just trying to strip it back to that very traditional style of agriculture before there was the introduction of all these deterrents that were required to get a good crop. And one of the great things that we've managed to do over creating whiskies like this is build a relationship with these farms and share the journey with them. And I think, however much barley you've grown, being able to hand somebody a bottle with their farm name on it, it will never get old. And I think it's ultimate bragging rights for the farmers as well.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, for me, it's we discussed this with Waterford about how important terroir is in whiskey, or if it is important. But I mean, you know, most distilleries don't seem to kind of be bothered so much about this. And Bruichladdich, it's really kind of a pride thing as well as kind of a philosophy just about whiskey in general. So the challenges as well, which we were discussing, I mean, there must be some financial challenges because, you know, it's much more time consuming and labour kind of, you know, intense to be producing this type of whiskey.
I would say there's definitely more thought to the process behind it. I mean, it's not as simple as, you know, just placing an order for X amount of tons of barley. We, as I said, you know, Alan Logan, the manager, he reaches out to these farms. He has good connections and conversation, and then it's about taking what the farmers have worked so hard to create and make sure we do it justice on the other side as well. And barley is, like you say, it's one of the 3 key ingredients that goes into the whiskey, and being able to put the spotlight on it and be able to talk about it is really cool. Bear barley is a great example because in terms of litres per alcohol, it doesn't produce as much as some conventional barley. So from, like you say, from a financial perspective, it's probably not the best grain to use. But from a flavour perspective, which is what we're focused on, it's completely worth it. And it opens up a completely new conversation for whiskey drinkers.
Absolutely, an opening up conversation for whiskey drinkers is something that whiskey drinkers at the moment seem to love. I mean, conversation is massive. We love talking with each other in communities like this, on comments and Instagram about kinds of which our favourite distilleries are and blah, blah, blah. So it is really important. I'm just going to read before we finish up this, so Christy can start talking to Sam about another amazing dram we've got for tonight. Just some more of the tasting notes because so many are coming in for this dram. And if you do have any last questions for Raymond, when I say last questions, it means like you're going forever. You're not, but it's like... Ali C, buttery oats, hints of spice and peach crumble, absolutely getting that. Ian Jambo Rain, really nice on the palate. The creaminess is there, but some slight saltiness as well. There's absolutely a coastal element.
There's definitely a bit of salinity, and being 50%, 1-2 drops of water, you'll just get a little bit more of that marine influence coming through. But great comments.
Absolutely, great tasting note. Matthew Chamberlain, it lingers for a long time, reminds me of burnt brown sugar. Mike Pizzara, if I could visit one distillery, this would be it. Well, Raymond's going to be there, so whenever they reopen. James Fallon, I hope Pour and Sip have a good discount on this. I'll check that with you. We will have a discount, and it will be in the members' store. Colin Bathgate, beautiful dram. I could drink this all evening. I feel another purchase coming on. Absolutely. Sean McCarrick, a few drops of water really brings out the fruitiness, followed by oak and salt, as we were saying, the water to bring out that kind of salinity in the dram. Wow, there's so many. I can't get through all of these. Shoot Smartphone, I'm loving this dram. Kevin O, lovely, creamy with a hint of salt. Malcolm Tucker, getting the cereal of oat biscuit, followed by a little bit of pepper, oak, then grape. Ali Curran, wee splash of water smooths it yet further, I feel. Michael Smith, this reminds me of the Aaron Courts cask, another great dram to start the night. And lastly, yes, Wham Bam, thank you, dram. Is this a yearly release? Yes, this is a yearly release. So, I mean, how long has this been going for, the Islay Barley you've been producing?
We released our first Islay Barley back in 2006, I believe. So it's an ongoing journey. It's not always the same farms. It's not always exactly the same kind of cask portfolio. But yeah, it's an ongoing release, and we're always looking to, like I say, put a spotlight on Islay.
Have you got a favourite year from the Islay Barley?
I think 2007 sticks out in my mind, which was from Rockside Farm exclusively. One of the reasons being, obviously, the only thing that goes really well with a great dram is a great story. And I think that it's when I started at the distillery, it was the product that we had listed at the time. It was my first introduction to the concept of local ingredients in a whiskey. And it just takes me back, you know, and I think it's amazing how whiskey can hit the senses and take you back to a specific moment.
Absolutely. It really can uncover as well kind of nostalgic memories from when we were younger as well in tasting notes. And you're like, that was what I smelled when I was in this place at this time. I've got a capital comment in caps locks here from Giovanna. This is on the store already, by the way. All the bottles are from this month. So please be aware that all the bottles from this month are in the members store. Mike, so a couple more questions before you go that are coming for Raymond. Nikolai, sorry if I haven't pronounced that right. Is Bruichladdich going to release more organic lines?
Yeah. So the organic line, it was originally going to be like a domestic product, and then it started going out to kind of like more travel retail market. But we will continue to produce organic. Absolutely, it's something we're passionate about, and you know, we're always going to try and further the story and explore more.
Great. And Colin Bell, this is a hard one to answer, really, because what's the best Octomore to start with? I mean, there's so many releases of the Octomore going. Where are you at now? Is it like a 12? Are you at 12?
We're on to the 11 series now at the moment. I guess, regardless of the range of the Octomores, the number within the range is what you're looking for. If you want to start off with an Octomore, you can't go wrong with the 0.1. It's it's 5 years old, 100% American oak, 100% Scottish barley, and that's going to be your first real introduction to the brands.
Great. Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Raymond. I have absolutely loved this dram, as I knew I was going to, because I love everything Bruichladdich. So thank you very much for talking to us. I'm going to invite Christy back, who is going to come back now.
She's here. What a dram! What a dram to kick off the evening.
I've been writing some of these tasting notes down myself, actually. I'm taking notes of some of these.
That's the greatest thing with Pour and Sip. We have some serious people on these who could write tasting notes for many different publications and distilleries, so it's really impressive.
Yeah, it's so good. And honestly, Raymond, thank you. Please hang around a bit and we'll have you back at the end for some general whiskey chatter, if that's all right.
Absolutely, I'll be here.
Yes, brilliant. Well, we'll say bye to you briefly. Thank you so much. What a treat that was. Yes.
Cheers, Raymond.
And before you go, my favourite memory of Bruichladdich is skimming stones on the water opposite. Such a glorious spot.
Absolutely, it really is. Hopefully you can come back sometime.
Fingers crossed. But we'll see you in a bit. Thanks so much. There we are. Wow.
It's a bit
Somehow we're halfway through the night.
Yeah, there's this could just as a kind of a palate cleanser after that before your interview. They're relatively new to this. How does anyone find these flavours or smells in these drams? Also, whilst I drink single malts such as Glenlivet or Glenfiddich, any tastings with these must be something wrong with me, as I just like to drink a malt.
No. Nothing wrong with you.
Nothing wrong with you. These notes come from having tried many different drams, and the more drams you try, the more you can uncover certain notes that you kind of remember from drams that you've tried in the past. I have to say, if you download maybe one of the flavour profiles, is it the Smiths? I can't remember what the website's called, that have a great whiskey kind of tasting notes flavour wheel.
Yeah, like a whiskey wheel. So if you just Google whiskey flavour wheel or something like that, it will come up. But honestly, for me, just before we get our next guest on, the best way, if you want to pick out flavour and aroma notes, you don't have to, by the way. If you just want to kick back and enjoy your drams, that's absolutely valid, and play on and enjoy it. But if you do think, oh, I'd like to get better at that, then have your 2 drams, even the 2 drams from this evening. Like, nose them side by side, compare them, how they're different. This one's smokier, this one's sweeter, this one maybe this one reminds me of Roadworks and this one doesn't. Like, whatever it is, it's all completely fine. And then from that point, you can kind of go off and pick more stuff out. But they're your whiskies. As long as you're enjoying them, who cares if you're writing down 10,000 tasting notes?
No, people sometimes get too bogged down in the tasting notes and forget to enjoy the whiskey as well. And that's another kind of bad thing. So, but, I mean, for me, sometimes just trying more and more and different types of varieties, just signing up to a subscription box like this is the best thing you could do to be able to start to maybe uncover more flavors. Because I mean, the variety of whiskies we've had in this, even just in tonight, you're trying 2 whiskies from the same place, completely and utterly different.
Definitely. I'm making lots of noise while I'm opening my box. What I was hoping to do, although I've lost my tasting notes, is a little reminder that in your box you should have an envelope of tasting notes. And that's a great place to start. Here are some. I don't think these are from this box. I've got Pour and Sip paraphernalia everywhere. So yeah, these aren't from this box. But on one side, you've got the distillery and our tasting notes. Don't forget on the back, you've got space to put your own notes. And here you've got, things like sweet, fruity, rich, botanical, floral, delicate, spicy. Use that as a kickoff point, right? And also, there are no wrong answers. Like, no one's going to be like, that doesn't taste of, I don't know, cherry. Like, who cares? Enjoy it. Go for it. Give it a go.
We've always said it. It's whatever you guys are getting from the whiskey, whatever you smell. I mean, and it can be something literally as simple as sweet. That's the tasting note. Some whiskies are sweeter than other whiskies. So there really are no wrong answers, no simple answers. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with you at all, Steve Hickson. And you're in the best place, really, to kind of continue your journey and kind of try as many whiskies as possible.
Exactly. And on that note of continuing the journey, I think we should bring our next guest, who's going to sign off the month's box. We're at the start of the chat. But this is Sam Simmons from, Aerolite Lyndsay, but lots of other things. Let's bring him in. Hey there, Sam. How are you doing?
Hey, Christy. Very well, thanks. Yeah.
Good. Have you been listening along? Well,
I've been drinking along. That was a chewy... That was a great whiskey. Wow. I did not expect so much depth and maturity at the age and flavor. And yeah,
I
Awesome.
was about to say, I mean, considering it's 8 years old, it's quite youthful. I mean, it's so well balanced and so that absolutely such a deep whiskey. So really, really beautiful stuff.
I think it's a great reminder that I think you said it, Andrew, earlier in the introduction that terroir has become sort of a 4-letter word for some reason in whiskey. And I think we're about to get slapped in the face for those of us who do believe that it is a 4-letter word, because the world is showing us, and Bruichladdich in Scotland, but really around the world, that the location of barley, the barley strains that we grow do affect the final flavor. So I think we're about to have a reality check on that. And that whiskey certainly showed it. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
It was fabulous. But yes, so Andy, very unfortunately, we can say bye to you for now, but you'll be back as well, I do hope.
I'll stick around.
Woo! See you shortly. So Sam, one of my cats has just appeared just to join the party as well. My very first question to you before we get into anything else, how much do you wish you were on the ferry to Islay right this moment?
Oh, well, I wouldn't very much, right? We've been editing footage from years that you were on Islay with Master of Malt. So I've been looking at all those old reels, and it's made me, I didn't cry, but it made me super emotional. First of all, the memories we shared, but also just the faces and you could almost smell some of the images, this high def film that Ken took. It was bittersweet to put those little reels together to celebrate next week. But look, we can't be, but we will be again. So we got to stay optimistic.
We will. And oh my gosh, if you are curious about Islay, want to know more about the island, do check out Master of Malt. Go on the blog, search for Feisile, just even Feisile. There are accents involved as well. I'm not Scottish. But you'll find it and check it out, and you'll get a feel for the island. And yeah, just amazing. But moving on from that, because we're sad not to be there, tell us about who you are. You're one of my favorite people in whiskey, but who are you? Tell us about you and your role.
Sure. Well, I mean, my role, my love of whiskey is similar to what we were just saying. We are the type of people who got into whiskey, so much so that we've made careers out of it. But even before that, almost like a religion, we would make pilgrimages to Islay or to Speyside or to distillery down the road just to learn more about whiskey. So I fell in love with whiskey in 2002. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from Aberdeen, Ontario, Canada, where I moved from Canada to Edinburgh in 2002, fell in love with whiskey, became enamored with not just the drink and the heady feeling it gave me, but the history, how it was intertwined with taxation or clearances and all these different bits of history, but also the flavor and the stories. I think Raymond said something earlier about the thing that goes best with a great dram is a great story. And Aerolite Lyndsay, that's what Aerolite Lyndsay is all about. And it's what really has kept me in whiskey is that what's the next story? What's the next experience?
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. There's nothing better than pouring a dram, kicking back with friends, chatting. Well, you've got something really delicious in your glass. And isn't this kind of like how Aerolite Lyndsay started? Kind of, I think
it's almost it's perfect. I want to thank Raymond for setting us up perfectly, talking about non-chill filtration, the way things used to be done, 46% minimum, all of these types of things. I think are so important to not just how we fell in love with whiskey. This is before our time when whiskey in the 70s was really in boom period. And again, we're talking about blends at that time. Things were simpler. Things were just extra old Scotch whiskey, red label, black label. And then if there were malts, it was 10-year-old Islay, 15-year-old Speyside. It was just, the whiskeys did what they said on the tin, and that was enough for consumers. Today, whiskey drinkers, and I'm guilty of it too, I want to find the new Gaelic term and the new fancy label and the new cask finish. But there was a time when it was simpler. And so Aerolite falls back to that, the real core of what we're into. Is that a cat, really? All that ruckus?
There's a cat lurking. Yeah, honestly,
it's amazing.
It's fine.
You're never alone with a pussycat. Oh wow.
No, she'll be back. I'm sure. She's made her debut on Pour and Sip recently, so I'm sure you'll see her again. All the cat lovers.
Well, look, we've seen a lot of tales on these virtual tastings over the last year. Excellent.
Now, I mean, if there's a cat, there's a cat. If we're not blessed with feline company, sadly not, I can see her lurking. Tell us, so Aerolite Lyndsay, this is not a distillery. So what is Aerolite Lyndsay? Where does the name come from? What's going on with it? It's not one of the names we'd see on the island if we were driving around.
No, that's true. And it's a lost name of whiskey history. So I was mentioning the 70s and even the 80s, DCL, Distillers Company Limited, Dewar's, These are the big names: were Tommy Dewar, John Walker, Alexander Walker, Arthur Bell, and Aerolite Lyndsay. It wasn't widely documented, but Aerolite Lyndsay was the clerk of all these big blending houses. She was the stocks clerk. And of course, that story isn't true, but it's the stories that surround the liquid in the glass that Aerolite's all about. And that's what we want to celebrate with it. When whiskey was simpler, as I mentioned, doesn't matter the source of the distillery. It matters stories we spin around the whiskey we have in our glass. And that's really what Aerolite's trying to talk about. I mean, it's 10-year-old Islay, no fancy Gaelic name, no fancy cask finishes. And just to ram that point home, it says so twice. It says 10-year-old Islay here, and the name Aerolite Lyndsay is an anagram of 10-year-old Islay. Just to
yes, and shout out to Matthew Chamberlain, who must be a Countdown viewer, who literally put in the comments, probably about 5 minutes ago, fantastic anagram for the name. I appreciate that.
That was quick. Wow. Did.
Wow. That's the key for your dram if you're watching it in the afternoon. Although sip, don't gulp, always sip, don't gulp. And an interesting thought from Bob here as well. I've never heard of this whiskey. Why? This is really good. First of all, jumping ahead, although we'll let you. It's hard to resist these drams. So yeah, Aerolite Lyndsay is one of these lesser known names. I mean, is this a challenge for you? I feel like sometimes as whiskey drinkers, we can be so distracted by the big names, but this is like a discovery. This is something really exciting to have.
Let's be clear. The big names are big for a reason. I am a Lagavulin 16 drinker. It's one of my top 5 that when it gets emptied, my wife and I, that's what we replace on our shelves. Big fan of Lefroy, big fan of the history of that distillery as well, and done research on it and visited it. And there's all sorts of amazing stories in the great distilleries of Islay, but we don't own a distillery, so we're not going to pretend to, and we don't have the capital to invest in one. We're an independent bottler. We bottle single casks from distilleries, not just around Scotland, but around the world under the Boutique Whiskey Company label. We have Darkness, a sherried style of whiskey that we bottle in single casks, as well as the core 8-year-old. And Aerolite Lyndsay is part of this range of Islay whiskeys. Again, we don't own a distillery, but it's about exploring amazing single casks and then continuous whiskeys that we batch up in about 1,000-liter batches, like Aerolite Lyndsay, Green Isle, the blended Scotch, Fiona MacLeod, a 33-year-old Islay, and a 25-year-old Grey Seal. So we don't own a distillery. The names are all plays, and the names are setting off points to great stories that we hope the drinkers get inspired to enjoy. But we're never going to be a Lefroy or Lagavulin. We are a small company, a small brand, and that suits us fine, to be honest. Yeah.
Excellent. So does this mean that your job is essentially to go cask shopping and seek out all the casks that you want to buy from other people to then put together, from one distillery, obviously it's a single malt, but that must be a huge part of your job.
Well, I can't take responsibility for the actual cask hunting. That's Toby Cutler and Felix Deere, who are our cask buyers. Felix focusing mostly around the world, and Toby in the UK, Ireland, Wales, England, and Scotland, with brokers from distilleries direct and things like that. But we work very closely together because I'm more the whiskey maker or the whiskey designer, I guess, that we say, hey, this is what we need. Can we get it? And most importantly, as an independent bottler, the big question for if you want to do something like Aerolite Lyndsay is, what can we get again next year? What can we get into a contract maybe, or what can we expect to be able to secure again in small volumes? As I'm sure you can guess, Lagavulin and Lefroy, they're in no rush to get rid of thousands of liters of their product every year. But as a small brand, maybe they would be, So we're just a small independent label that's just doing small batches every year, about 1,000 liters, like I said. So that's really the plan is like, hey, Toby, Felix, what can we get? And then how can I make it taste the way we want to make it taste? And for this whiskey, what we wanted to create was, when making Aerolite Lyndsay, was to have a whiskey that would sort of take up the space on the shelf of a whiskey drinker who already is engaged with whiskey, but it's an Islay whiskey for when you don't want to drink that special old or rare bottle that you keep, and a whiskey that ticks the Islay boxes, that's approachable, delicious, a whiskey meant for sharing, as Dave Broom wrote about it. Glasses, throw the cork away. That was the idea.
What you're saying, this is an everyday indulgence dram. You're kicking back. It's like, it's not a birthday, it's not Christmas, but you still want something thoroughly delicious.
Exactly. Satisfying, ticking the boxes of what we expect from that daily dram when we feel like reaching for Islay. And that's the idea, yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to read out some tasting notes and then we're going to nose it, because I've sort of been having a little sniff, but I want to get your thoughts on this. So Ian says it's not overpowering on the nose. Rob says it's like medicinal Caramac. David's getting peat, iodine, and honey. Green tea is green. Yes, very different to Bruichladdich. I'm getting burnt engine oil on the nose. I'm also getting that. Love it. James, I'm already very familiar with Aerolite. 2020 Advent Calendar. Yes. Oh my gosh. Beautiful Advent calendars. Check them out. Excellent. It introduced me to it and I just had to have a bottle. Fabulous. Sean, this is such a great descriptor. This one smells like a stroll along the seashore, salt ozone, a little tar, some seaweed, old rope. Yes, please to that. So good. Gareth's getting some leather as well. I've gone into a note here. There's so many of them. Nigel saying mellow peat aroma, great nose. Mike's finding it very floral, which is interesting. So I do think there's a bit of a grassiness here. And then some vanilla as well. Michael, burnt out campfire smoke, leather. Grilled pineapple and mango, honey, salted fudge, whisper of iodine. So many good notes here. So many good notes. But yeah, talk us through it, Sam. What do you get when you sort of nose and have a taste of this whiskey?
Well, the first thing is I've watched these tastings before as a fan of yours, Chrissy, and Pour and Sip. And I think all your members should get a high five for writing wicked tasting notes.
Yes.
It's so good. I love it. Every tasting, I mean. And they're hard to write. I actually don't like writing tasting notes. I'm happy to talk about it like we're about to do, but writing them because it's so subjective. What did I have for dinner? How do I feel today? Did I get my jab? As things our palates, our brains operate very differently. My favorite thing about what you just read, some of the notes you just read, is that as a bit of a whiskey nerd, tarry rope, peach, floral, diesel oil, spent fire. That's just those notes are keynotes of 5 different distilleries on Islay. And that's something that makes me feel pretty proud, to be honest, because I'm trying to make this not taste like the distillery it's from. We're using different casks, marrying them together to be its own signature, its own fingerprint, its own story. So that's really cool to hear notes like that are so diverse and not clearly Lagavulin, clearly Lefroy, clearly Kalila,
I love it. And honestly, I feel like just having that sort of, most of us anyway, I hope all of us have walked along a beach at some point, and it does take you back to that moment of like sea spray, like fresh air, all the like saltiness, the iodine vibes. I love it. And isn't this the magic thing about whiskey, right? It's incredible.
I love that outdoorsy character in a lot of whiskeys too. And I think that's such an important element of visiting Islay, that experience we have on Islay, whether we're hitchhiking home because we can't drive, or we're just sitting by a beach with friends, or we're walking between buildings at a distillery, just taking in the warehouse air. That outdoorsiness is such a big part of whiskey enjoyment for me. I love that sort of forest and those types of things. Perfect.
So before we crack on, and I'm going to get you to talk us through it. Jeff asked, do you vary the distillery that this comes from? That's an interesting question.
That's a great question, and it's exactly what we did not want to do. So that when we started this plan, like let's have an ongoing release, because we're doing single cast. They're called Wind and Wave within the Character of Islay range, and that's cool and that's exciting, and I love doing that. But that's not something you sort of blend, and I love blending. I worked with David Stewart and Brian Kinsman for years. I'm a big admirer of John Glazer and many other Scotch whiskey blenders as well as American whiskey blenders, and I think that that ability to take a source distillery and make it the same every year is a challenge that I was up for. So no, it is from one distillery, and as long as they agree to keep supplying it to us, we'll hope to continue making it. But as I said, we take a small amount. We put it in a few different types of casks, which I'm happy to speak about if you want to, Christy.
Yes,
and then
please.
marry it back together to give it the flavor.
Yes, tell us all about the whiskey, and we'll nose it while you talk to us about the casks. Please, I want to know everything.
Sure. Again, I think this is some of the most boring part about whiskey. Again, in real life, we'd be talking about each other. How you been? How was the vaccination? I love the paint behind you. I love the bookshelves. We talk about things that are actually important. What distillery is it? Not actually important. Do we like it? That's important. So it sounds like you do, and that's great to hear. But of course, you want to know what's in it. Natural color. Well, that's the end of my bottle.
I say it's gone down well in your household then.
Yes, well, my wife is a big Islay whiskey fan. I drink less Islay whiskey than she does, but she's a big Islay whiskey fan. She loves this. But yes, natural color, and that color it coming from refill American oak hogsheads, but also a series of different casks that we marry together. So we take about 25% of the final blend has spent no less than 9 months these days in octaves, so smaller casks that used to hold Oloroso sherry. We put the whiskey in there. We let it sit for 9 months. takes on a massive hit of dried fruits and spice and a little bit of funk too, that I think when you mix it back with the hoggy, it becomes that petrolic, diesel-y thing that you and a couple of viewers mentioned. And then I also use a small percentage of sort of odd casks to pull it away. So we have, like, you know, I think interesting distilleries are like Macduff, Tullibardine, Jura, Ardbeg. These are interesting distilleries, and I think when you put whiskey into the casks that held those whiskeys, it pulls the style in different directions. So then we marry that back together and add it in 5 to 10% of the final blend of that.
So here's an interesting question then from me, and then I will go on with tasting it, because I'm like, literally the FOMO is real right now. Your taste notes just making me salivate. So we often talk about, I'm so controlled, I know, so out of character. We often talk about finishing in like ex-sherry casks or ex-bourbon casks, but are you talking about finishing in like an ex-Jura cask or an ex-Macduff cask? Because that is really interesting. Yeah,
that's what we're doing. We're using, I mean, I think Raymond spoke about efficiency, or about, yield from barley. The fact that the beer barley isn't as generous with its yield as some of the more, commercial barleys. And yes, there's ecological reasons why we want to use the highest yield. It seems like a waste, but if the trade-off is flavor, there's got to be a good balance. I think Bruichladdich is really working towards justifying that from an ecological sense. But, wood waste is tragic. So we're really keen to use the barrels that we can to try and create new flavors. I'm not a distiller. We don't own a distillery, so I can't control the distillate. What I can control is its exposure to oxygen and its exposure to oak, or the previous occupants of that oak as well. So those are the elements where we try to play and put our characteristics onto the whiskey.
I love it. I love it. Right, let's have a taste. Right at the nose as well. Cheers. Talk us through the nose as well. And the no, I'm going straight. We'll go straight into the palate. We'll just go in.
You go in. I'm happy to talk about it. But again,
I'm going in.
I think you guys have nailed it. So you have this whole spread from sort of citrusy, floral type of things to heavy fire, bonfire, even like petrol and diesel sort of burnt. We used to have these scratch and sniff stickers that had the gasoline smell, which I loved. So there's a bit of that on the far end. And then in between is that malty, vanilla, dried fruit that you're getting from the sherry sort of characteristics. And so with each visit, I think you maybe find something a bit new, a bit different. And that's the delight with any well-made whiskey, I think. And then for me on the palate, even at 46%, it's pretty easy. It's pretty forgiving. And it is sort of that everyday thing. I'm not encouraging you to drink every day. Of course not. That'd be irresponsible. But when you crave that Islay flavor, but don't want to open your Ardbeg 17-year-old or your 25-year-old, whatever, you know what I mean? That's what this is for. And it should tick the box of be approachable, but still have all the things you want in an Islay whiskey.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And I think people have got it, put the nail right on the head, hit the nail on the head. There we go. Colin says, for the price and overall experience, best in the box. High praise indeed. Gareth, cut grass straight away on the palate. Being a beginner to this, I was delighted to find cut grass on the palate section of the tasting notes card. Well, there you go. Boom. Don't forget the tasting notes card. Sean, it's reminiscent of a campfire on a beach, lingering smoke and saltiness. Bruce says it has to be in the right mood for this one. Finding it has a smoky aftertaste that grows on you a bit. Yes. I mean, and do you know what? We've had an unpeated malt and a peated malt. If peat isn't your thing, that's absolutely fine. No big deal. But it's great to give it a go and see, I think.
Yeah.
David is saying boiled mint sweets, licorice, peat, barbecue. Ali says, what a fantastic achievement. Superb. Love it. High praise there for you, Sam.
That's very nice.
Rob is enjoying the charcoal smoke flavor, the perfect campfire dram. Yes, get me outside. Gareth says it's lighter than 10-year-old Lafroig, and that is true. And this is the thing with peat as well. It's not all or nothing. There's such a variance within with any flavor note, I think, which I really enjoy. More saying it's great, nice to drink outdoors. Joe has been experimenting with water. Now, if you're scared about adding water to whiskey, get a teaspoon or something and go really gradually. Joe says 3 droplets of water opens up the nose so much. Melted butter, fresh salty sea air, burnt caramel, cream, burnt toast, honey char. I've also sampled this in the 2020 Advent calendar. Amazing. So many notes coming through. I'm not going to be able to get to them all. Have I asked you this question another question from Jeff? Do you blend it on Islay? I think that's another really good question.
That's a great question. So currently in Scotland, that's not required. So there are the regions, the protected regions, which I'm a big supporter of for all sorts of reasons. But currently know is it just needs to be mature, obviously distilled, matured, and bottled in Scotland. Where you blend and where you play with the ingredients can happen anywhere, but the final ingredients need to be blended in Scotland, bottled in Scotland. I play here at my desk though, and I play in our lab at the office as well, which are in England. But I do go up to the distillery, up to our warehouse and our bottling hall to play with various whiskeys as well, when it was easier to travel.
Yeah, a bit tricky now to get up to Edinburgh. That is a really good question. So yeah, keep your questions coming in. There are so many tasting notes here. So Ian's saying this is a very drinkable whiskey, quite light on the palate, but with some smoke and a gentle fade on the finish. More. I'm going to have a song in my head now. Thanks for that. Michael has come back to our very favourite topic of all time on Pour and Sip, which is food pairing. This would go so well with or in sticky barbecue pork ribs. Great smoke from the whiskey. Oh my gosh, we're so here for food chat. I think it's because we're all hungry because it's dinner time. Ian is saying, another Ian, fantastic hit of smoke on the palate with a smooth licorice finish. Mike saying it's really complex, and then Gareth agreeing, very drinkable, light and lovely, praising this. Yes, loving it.
That's lovely, guys. Thank you. Yeah, that's very nice to hear. And that, I want to be clear, the person who said this is not for me, great. Not that it might not be that way forever. You might have a mood where you are in. I'm not a big fan of Islay whiskeys every day, or, a regular drinker. It needs to be a particular mood. If I saw a car accident or lost my job, that's when I'm joking. But I think that's Islay is a particular flavor for a lot of drinkers, and it's part of the repertoire. It's part of the 5 major food groups of whiskey drinking. So that's what Aerolite's for, is when you're in that mood, hopefully it ticks those boxes in a light, approachable way. If you're a real Pete head, then look, there's Octomore. There's so many options for the real diesel heads out there. But I think and mint, someone else mentioned mint. That's something that we definitely try to protect in the distillery character of this whiskey before we blend it. And that's a characteristic I love as well, because it's lifting, it's fresh. No matter how peaty or heavy the whiskey becomes because of its peatiness and its source distillery, mint just freshens it up.
It's glorious. And here's a really interesting point from Gareth, which I think is such a thing, and why sometimes if you're just drinking or writing your own tasting notes, doing it on your own is good. So funny when people mention a note and you suddenly also get it. Licorice was mentioned, and now that's all I can think of, which is so true, right? I often find this like sometimes judging spirits, you sort of do it quietly on your own first, and you do your thing, and then you chat about it at the end, and it's like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, licorice, of course. And that's all you can taste.
Yes, well, you could plant that seed in people's minds as well. I've seen people do it on purpose at tastings where they serve the audience the same whiskey twice, but then lead them down a totally different path before revealing the 2 whiskeys were exactly the same.
Amazing, isn't it? Fabulous. Well, Sam, that was incredible. Thank you so much for talking through it all. Such a joy. I think we'll see.
Us in the set. It really means a lot to be included in a set amongst some real legends of the Islay whiskey world. And yeah, thank you.
It's just incredible. What a box it's been. I feel like all 5 drams have been like standout. So awesome to have you as part of the lineup. Let's bring back Andy and Raymond. Hello. How are we doing, folks?
Doing good, thanks.
That's right up my street. And I have to say what Sam was saying. This is the kind of jam that when I know what you're saying as well. I'm not always in an Islay mood. I have to say sometimes if I'm just at home, I just want to open something up and have a light drink. I usually head for Speyside maybe more than I would Islay. Doesn't mean I don't prefer Islay, but when I am in the mood, I'm in the mood for Islay. And this is the kind of whiskey that would start me off as well. It's just very, very enjoyable Islay. Such a thing could ever exist as enjoyable Islay, really. But this is it.
Yeah, I feel like whiskey as a whole, right? And Islay's a great example of this because there's so many preconceptions about what whiskey should be or what it tastes like, or if you like it or if you don't like it. Kind of to back that up, Andrew said, since doing Pour and Sip, I wasn't a PT fan, but it's growing quickly on me. This is it. Sometimes I think we just need to get out of our comfort zone and try some stuff a little bit.
That's the great thing about these boxes as well, is it takes you out of your comfort zone because you're going to try one and you might not like one, you might not like them all, but sometimes you're going to discover something. You go, that's the dram that's suddenly introduced me to peat. I quite like that. I bet you'll head on to some other peaty drams now as well from trying that. So it's really interesting.
This is something I love about whiskey, though. It sort of fosters open-mindedness. The nature to truly enjoy whiskey, you have to have an open mind and be a bit promiscuous and try different things and don't be loyal and take a chance. You know, how do you know you don't like it? You might like it tomorrow. You don't like it today, and that's encouraging for all sorts of social reasons as well. You know, it makes us like-minded in that way, which makes the whole community of whiskey drinkers pretty special.
Absolutely. One more thing for everybody, as we always do at the end of our pour and sips. Please let us know your favourite from the box this month. I think this is going to be a really tough one for everyone. So I have to say, I've enjoyed every single dram from this box, and I mean, I think this has been one of my favourite boxes. I think so far. I don't know about you, Christy.
Oh my gosh, it's just been such a joy. Like I actually can't quite go over it, and I'm a bit sad. I'm like, can we do Islay again next month, please? Like I don't want to say goodbye to the island yet, quite frankly. I'm not ready.
There were so many people when we announced it who were kind of scared as well. I was like, oh God, an all Islay box, I'm not going to like it. And then everyone's been saying, oh, well, actually, you know, that Bruichladdich is unpeated. And then that one introduced me to peat. So it's really interesting that, you know, people have kind of discovered different sides of Islay.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's votes are coming in. So Ali's saying seconded, I've scored 4 of the 5 drams, 5 out of 5. I do love Islay whiskey though. I mean, you got the cheese, babes, got the cheese. Having said that, I haven't chosen. James is saying Bruichladdich Barley for me, just nudged it. One of the few that gets a 10. Aerolite 9.5. Both will be in my shelf. Gareth, so I'm between the beginning and the end of the box. Both the Binnerhaven and the Aerolite Lyndsay are my bottles of choice. Rob, this box has let me discover the peated drams of the sherry cask influence. Really enjoying the balance of sweet and smoke. Your Uncle Vanya, this is the biggest cheat ever. My favourite is in the box. Oh yes.
That's not what we asked.
It's amazing. And we've also had a request to make a separate pour and sip Islay subscription, which is an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Raymond, a question for you. What was it that made you get into whiskey? Or have you always loved whiskey?
That's a good question. I think everybody expects some sort of fairy tale story about, you know, I was swept up one day. And truth is, I've lived here pretty much all my life. I think, you know, you're aware of it, but you're not really aware of the impact it has on the rest of the world. I started on blends, and I think blends are a great way to get people into the wider world of whiskey. You can dip your toe in the water without hurting your wallet or your taste buds. And it was Black Bottle that was in my house when I was younger. My parents' bottle, of course, but you know, the odd dram went missing and it got filled up with cold tea until the point where it was 90% cold tea. But yeah, from there, you know, it's amazing how like the smell of a mash had such a different effect on me as a child to now. You're almost thinking, you know, what is that? That when you get older and you go into a mash house or you go into a still house, it's incredible the way it hits the senses. So I came to Bruichladdich. I got a job as a tour guide, and that was in my early 20s. So that was my first introduction to whiskey, and I learned as I went. And it was great, you know, you're rubbing shoulders with people here like, you know, Jim McEwen, Alan Logan, Duncan McGilvray, and these were the people who got me to where I am. So yeah, it was nice to be able to learn from the guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and raising a glass to Duncan just there, like such a fabulous man. And this is the thing, I feel like obviously like he's no longer with us, but such an incredible community of people in Islay and beyond in whiskey, just wonderful, wonderful humans. Or everywhere you'd look.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's a lot of distilleries here, and I think some people expect a rivalry, but there's enough space for all of us. You know, and like Sam says, we're all doing different things. We're all bringing something different to the table, and it's part of the fun. I'd say whiskey as a community is one of the most warm and welcoming kind of drinks categories you can get into. There's no right or wrong answers, and there's always somebody willing to help out.
And oh my gosh, imagine the vibe at the first whiskey festival back. I cannot wait. Imagine everyone all in one space again.
We'll probably need to record it as well, because I don't imagine many will remember what they've been up to. So yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be asking questions of where does Sam get his hat from.
Oh yeah, I mean the chat has gone off. The chat has gone off.
I'm definitely asking.
It'll be on eBay in 7 minutes, guys.
Yeah,
I love it. And what were you going to say, Andy? Sorry, I was just going to say people are saying their favourites and I can't get through them all quick enough. So we've got votes for Bruichladdich, we've got votes for Lagavulin, we've got votes for Aerolite, we've got another vote for Lafroig, we've got Binnerhaven. We've got Joe saying that it's 3 of the 5 drams and 9 out of 10, too difficult to choose. David saying Aerolite and Lefroy. Green Tea saying Lagavulin by a hair's breadth. We've got more Lagavulin. Tonight the Bruichladdich by a whisker, but the Aerolite is lovely. I think we've got votes for everyone in the box. There's some Bunnahabhains going on. I mean, you can't please all the people all the time, but apparently you can with neither box.
Steve Gentleman's got Aerolite being delivered tomorrow, so he's wasted no time, and you can't because these bottles go quickly on the store, so you have to get in.
It's fabulous. So yeah, I mean, anyone has any last minute burning questions, now's the time to ask while we kick back and enjoy our drams. But what's your favourite Islay memory, Andy?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think I will be looking forward to the next festival when it happens next year, hopefully, if we can get to go.
Yeah,
absolutely.
One of my favourites.
I want to know. Sorry, Christy. I wanted to know what you two are drinking at the moment. That's not something you've been, producing and dealing with every day. That's what I want to know.
What am I drinking at the moment? To be honest, Andy, the thing I drink most amounts of is copious amounts of coffee. But when I get home at night, I quite like a Glengoyne 18 or something light, smooth, a lot of fruit going on, and that's usually my wind down, because it's quite hard when you're opening a laptop in the bedroom and that's your office for the day. So that's that real transitional dram for kind of getting me away from the desk and again looking outward at other distilleries and unwinding.
Great. I mean, Glengoyne's great. I mean, Glengoyne just in general is such a drinkable dram. That's a real tongue twister.
Drinkable dram.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I absolutely. That's like what I was saying about. It's a real kind of like. If I don't need to be in the mood for Glengoyne, I think I just could drink Glengoyne responsibly. Obviously. How about you, Sam?
I've recently, because of, I don't know if it was a pour and sip or another box someone sent me, but recently rediscovered Bunnahabhain. Just 12-year-old Bunnahabhain, and it's super satisfying. It's sort of my. Recently it's been my break, but I'm also, as you said, Raymond, I'm a blended Scotch fan. And so I often will mark the end of the day with, eat something Johnny Walker or Green Isle, our own thing, or a Compass box, something that just sort of all around ticks all the boxes and says, evening begin. Kids, daddy's ready to play now.
Yeah, I think actually it's really funny. I think Bunnahabhain 12 is something that absolutely so many people say that was their gateway dram into whiskey. It's the one that really got them into kind of single malt whiskey. It's a really, really kind of special dram, I think, for a lot of people.
Brilliant. There's some more tasting notes coming in. Nigel saying time has gone really quickly, very enjoyable. I would never pretend to be an expert, just enjoying the tasting of great whiskies, which is fabulous. Ali saying there were absolutely no misses in this box. Chris saying thank you for a great evening, great fun and great guests. So yes, I'll second that. Thank you so much both for coming to join us. It's been a blast.
Absolutely.
It's been great. Thanks very much.
Fabulous. Well, I suppose time has run away with us, as it often does on Pour and Sip. Where has it gone? The fastest hour and a bit of the week, I swear.
And it gets longer and longer, don't our Pour and Sips at the moment. We very, very much struggle to fit it into an hour now.
I know. It is so funny. But there will be more where that came from. There's a new box heading your way. We'll be back on the 3rd of June. So, yeah, get ready for that. First and third Thursday, can't say it, every month. And don't forget, you can keep in touch in between the tastings on social media at Pour and Sip Club, like everywhere, basically. And there's the blog, there's the member store. Don't forget the survey, the loyalty cards, all of this, loyalty points, rather. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, folks. Raising a dram to you all. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Don't forget Eurovision semi-finals. Go watch them.
Bye.
See you later, folks.